But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
Listen to all this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with money.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
Second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Second. There we go. Hello. And welcome to Hannah Wrestles with the Mute button for 5 minutes before showtime. Seriously, welcome to HBR Talk 257, The Truth About Women's Spaces. And just before we start anything else, this I don't know if somebody else already went over this one or not. So we have already a super chow. And I've got it up on the screen because I can't read this. It's art. It's not a statement. So this is our super chow. This is from Why Yes, this is my legal name, who gave us $5 and posted Giga Chad. And I'm going to, because it doesn't show very well, I'm going to hide a couple of the participants for a minute and our chairs. And there we go. So you can see it. So there's our Giga Chad. And then back we go. We'll put the chairs back first so we don't fall down.
That is cute.
It's great.
It's the Kraftwerk version of Giga Chat.
Yes, that's that had to take some work, honestly. That's pretty cool. So there's our first super chow of the night before we even got started. I love it. And for the rest of the discussion here, so our show tonight, like I've talked about this on Twitter a little bit, so I'm gonna point it out. Well, I'm gonna point out who we are first. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, the Dingbat, Scatterbrain. Here with Nonsense Annihilator, Lauren Brooks, and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson. And tonight,
No, you
yes,
you don't get to call yourself the Scatterbrain and not call me the Scatterbrain. I'm so drunk right now. I am the Scatterbrain.
You don't get it, dude. I actually have my wallet and my keys and my work ID chained together so that I can't accidentally leave the house without something vital to what I'm going to do, what I'm leaving the house to do. Like I am thinking of other things all the time, so I take shortcuts. That's also why we start the show just 15 minutes ahead, and why you don't get a notification until 15 minutes before showtime, because Restream does YouTube differently than everything else. So everything else I can like put the information in the morning and no problem, and I do a lot of getting the show ready hours before showtime because I work at night on Wednesday nights, and so I come home and do that, and then I sleep for several hours, and then I get up and I do the rest of the show prep. But YouTube's different. It's got to be different. It's like Coca-Cola has a different ratio of syrup to soda, and YouTube has a different setup for setting up Restream. And if I don't remember to make the correct menu selection, then Restream creates a YouTube stream when I start the stream, even if I've already created one, and it doesn't use the one I created. So I just don't create one. I let Restream create it. And so that's why I have this countdown that you guys got to see, and starting ahead of time and everything. So that's why I call myself a dingbat, because I'm always thinking of something else. Whatever I'm doing, I'm always thinking of 2 or 3 other things. Always got stuff on my mind. And being distracted like that, I make mistakes if I don't use fail-safes to prevent those mistakes.
Yeah.
It's called not being mindful of what's in the moment. And I suppose people are going to tell me that's attention deficit disorder, but I don't really think that I need a diagnosis for that. It's a lack of practicing attention in the moment. So there you go.
One looks at the evidence, and the evidence insofar as a show has taken place every Thursday night for going on 10 years.
True. Although I'm not responsible for most of that 10 years.
You have been for the last 7 years.
Has it been 7? No.
It's been something like that.
It's since we went to Australia. That was 20. What was that? 20.
That was 2017.
17.
But yes. While you are here, Hannah, to downplay your efficiency, I am here to assure you, quite to the contrary, that you've been doing jolly well. In a position that I would never put myself in, because I tried during that brief position where Brian was not available because of cancer. I was here to try and host the shows, And good Lord, I can tell you, it is so fucking stressful being in charge of, broadcasting the shows.
It is. I will admit that.
And Hannah doesn't give herself enough credit for being able to do this, because it is so fucking stressful and it is so fucking difficult.
And it's really different from radio too. Like when I was in college, I had now campus radio in college didn't go off campus. It went through the phone lines. We were not FCC regulated in that way. Like, I could say things that you couldn't say on the radio, except I was on a campus that was started by the Mennonite Church, and it still had, like, we had closed dorms, so not co-ed, and there were days and hours where men were not allowed in the women's dorms at all, and women were not allowed in the men's dorms at all, except to, move a student in or out. So it was a dry campus, no smoking on campus, like really strict. So we were stricter than the FCC, but I didn't have to do things like station identification, which you have to do every so often under FCC regulations or you get in trouble. But I did have, I had a setup. I actually used to tote my Macintosh SE and the keyboard across campus in a backpack every morning and use HyperCard for you old folks out there to use sound effects on my radio show. And so I've done this kind of thing before. And I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go over there, get started, get everything set up, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, I would yell something along the lines of "Wake up" or "Good morning." I had a shout into the microphone. I had students that used me as their alarm clock, so apparently it didn't scare the shit out of them. But yeah, there you go. So I have some experience with this kind of thing. But it is, Mike's right, it is kind of stressful, starting it out and everything. So I get nervous, and that's probably partly why I do the self-depreciation there. But on the other hand, one does have to take responsibility for being a bit of a dingbat in regard to, because I do have that flaw. But in any case.
And here we are, despite the technical difficulties.
Yes. On with the show. The show must go
for the 2000th episode or something.
Something like that, yeah, if we count everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, post-introductions, tonight we're going to do some light housekeeping. And we've got this light housekeeping to do because feminists and traditionalist women have kind of conspired to make a mess of the bathroom issue. But before we do that, we gotta do what we gotta do. So as always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences, both recent and long past, have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly, instead of relying on any social media platforms tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/jutsthetip, which is where our friend who gave us the Giga Chad posted our nice super chow. That's still showing in the screen. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And with that, I gotta point out, I think we've all heard about the bathroom issue. Like the kids' book says, everybody poops. Obviously, this includes trans women, right? But Radfems and Traditionalist conservative women object to trans women using women's bathrooms that are open to the public. Their argument is that these spaces should be reserved for biological females, also known as cis women, only. They claim to be afraid of trans women because they consider trans women to be men, and they say for that reason alone they fear violence and predation from them. So in other words, this is just another feminist men are violent and scary narrative, but pointed at trans women instead of men who identify as men. So that's the issue, right? Or is it? Because is it really that simple? I've got some articles.
Or is it really that complicated?
Yeah, I genuinely think it's neither. So we're going to start with this article from Ipsos. This is an organization that does some research, and they did some research into this specific issue. Yes, we are doing light housekeeping to see if all the lights operate, Packard. I think some of the lights are a bit too light in this situation. But this article is about a survey in which the respondents stated that nearly half of women use the men's room to avoid long lines in the women's bathroom.
And they feel perfectly safe.
Yes.
Weird enough.
Right.
This isn't ancient research. Feminists always act like, we use ancient research from the 80s and that it has an expiration date. This information somehow has an expiration date. But this is from 2017. It's not that long ago. A sizable portion of American women say that they have used the men's room when the line for the women's bathroom was too long, 49%. Although risque, many women have peed in even more unusual places. 1 in 5 women say the most unusual place they've peed was behind the bushes, 19%, closely followed by in the woods, 17%. Or
it's the same thing.
On the road. Well, it depends. Like, are the bushes in your backyard?
Right, right.
If you don't shave, you're always peeing behind at least one bush. So,
I mean, most men have peed against a tree, but presumably what they mean by this is they've peed on the other side of the tree.
Right.
Where the tree
nobody can see them.
The tree, the side of the tree that's not as visible to the roadside.
Exactly. and 16% say on the roadside. So we're looking at this. That's really the most relevant part of this article to the discussion. And the thing that really hit me with this is how scared women must be of men to go in the men's room. Like, that's the first place I would think of going if I was terrified of men, would be a location where it's likely there's going to be one in there with his dick out, because that's just exactly how you respond when you're afraid, right? Like, if you've got arachnophobia, you're going straight for the spider web. You're going to reach in and let the little critter walk up your arm because fear. Like, totally.
And please let us know in the comment section, men, if you've ever accidentally walked into a women's bathroom. I did once because I didn't read the signs right. And I walked in and noticed there weren't any urinals. And I was like, why is this place so pristine? and it's not normal for a women's bathroom to be pristine, but this was in a pub in Britain. And for whatever reason, it was a great deal more pristine than there would have been. And I walked in and went, why is this so pristine? And I thought, oh shit, I'd best walk out. And then I saw the sign and I went, oh shit, oh God. I was so glad I didn't get caught.
Yeah.
Which goes to show you, men are far more scared to walk into a women's bathroom than women are to walk into a men's bathroom. And what does that tell you? Counterintuitively, about the situation, that women really aren't that scared to walk into a men's bathroom, just on account of they might get raped, and men are scared to walk into a women's bathroom just in case they get accused of being a rapist, which throws something of a wrench into the works, doesn't it? About this whole idea that whatever the trans situation throws into this.
Well, the thing that honestly, the thing that inspired me to do this show is the treatment of the issue. The reason these women are objecting to trans women in the women's room is their claim is that by virtue of being male, they're dangerous. That's like what you've just mentioned. Like, obviously, it's baloney. Men are more scared to go into women's rooms than women are to go into men's rooms. And I mean, if just by virtue of being male, they were scary, obviously no woman would ever go into the men's room.
Right. See, I am taking this from a different approach, because I'm really fucking fed up. I say we ban women from women's fucking restrooms. Get these bitches out of here. Okay, so it's Lauren's anecdotal time, right? So
all right.
I'm at work, and the one designated female's bathroom that I have is like literally a half a football field away. So I have to make the trek every single time I have to go. And it's one room, but it's got 2 stalls. Well, somebody broke one of the toilets. One of these big butt Bettys in the fucking office broke the fucking toilet. So we have to wait for a new one, right? So there's one stall that's out of order. So the other day, I'm like, all right, I gotta go. I make the fucking walk. You gotta prepare in advance because you don't need an accident on the way to the bathroom, right?
Right.
So get all the way up there, and I'm just absolutely busting by this time, right? So I open the door, and the one stall that was available, the door was shut. It's like, all right, turn around and walked out. I sat down because there's some chairs right outside. So I sat down. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to sit here and wait because if I move, there's going to be a problem. And I'm not going all the way back down to my office just to turn around and have to come back. Anyway, so I sit there and I'm waiting for this chick to come out. And it's like 5 minutes. About 10 minutes goes by. Finally, the fucking door opens, right? I'm like, thank God. I jump up out my chair. I run into the bathroom. I'm like, oh my gosh, it must have been the shit of life, right? She must have been moving bricks in this place, right? But you go in there and there's no smell, nothing. It was one of these young girls who works in the office, which does have a dedicated bathroom, by the way. She doesn't use that one. She comes out into the public bathroom. Anyway, she's sitting there on her fucking phone. You can see the out of order sign, right? You know that this is a public bathroom that's available for the customers and the staff alike. Yet you sit there and you heard the fucking door open.
To use her phone.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You heard me open the fucking door, turn around and come out, and you still decided to sit there for another fucking 6 minutes while you're rifling through TikTok or Instagram or whatever the fuck on your phone because you don't want to go back to your desk and do any goddamn work. So you're going to inconvenience everyone else. And this is my point here. This is how women act. They are so rude and inconsiderate of other people's space and time. Just get the fuck out. You know what I mean? I am so sick of these women with this entitled attitude that this space is my space and nobody else can enter it.
Oh yeah. And honestly, like, when you look at this issue, women are incredibly inconsiderate when it comes to the women's bathroom. And I've noticed this, under a variety of circumstances. Obviously as a bathroom user, but also as the person who had to clean up after them. Like, we've all, I think I've repeated the story of Picasso more than once. But,
oh, yes.
geez, like, I mean, I worked in a gas station, so the worst ways that people treat a bathroom, I think the only bathrooms that get treated worse than gas station bathrooms are subway bathrooms. And I had no idea until I went someplace that had a subway or an underground for, people across the pond.
You're not talking about the place that does sandwiches.
No, I am not talking about the place that does sandwiches. Their bathrooms are always pretty clean, actually, when they have bathrooms. There's some that are in gas stations, so they don't have their own bathroom. They have the gas station bathroom, and then the grocery store I shop at actually has one. But no, I'm talking about like the trains that go underground from place to place. And you go into those bathrooms, and I don't know what it is. I guess it's because it feels more hidden to be underground. Well, bus stations are like this too, though, so it's not just underground bathrooms, but like holy shit, or rather unholy shit. Like, I thought women's bathrooms were bad at gas stations. I have never seen such disregard for other people's sensibilities as when I went in New York, 1986, actually, bathroom in the subway, and it was just unbelievably atrocious. Like, it was graffiti on the walls, and like some of it looked like it might have been written in period blood. It was nasty ass place. Never want to go in there again. Smelled ungodly, like I say, unholy shit. But yeah, like, I don't understand why anybody would want to go into that women's room, but you know, you gotta pee. People gotta pee, right? Yeah. So this is the first thing. Women are not picky about where they go pee. Women get more irritated, get more picky about whether or not they can go right now. They don't necessarily, some plan ahead. Like, there are, says in here, 2/5 of women say they think about their bladder health often. And then there's also a percentage that it says, 21% scope out where the bathroom is when they arrive at a public venue. So, like, I'm in that percentage. I make sure I know where they are ahead of time, usually, because you don't always get a chance to ask. And some places really like to make their bathrooms unobtrusive, which makes it hard to find them. But yeah, like, so women get really hung up about that. And we probably, part of the reason we do it is after we have babies, the muscles that control the sphincter that keeps you from peeing when you don't want to get weaker unless you really work at keeping them strong. And sometimes even if you really work at keeping them strong. So women might be a little more picky about that, might be a little more high-strung about that than men, just because of that situation. Like, if you've never had a hernia or anything that can interfere with those muscles, you might have an easier time not worrying about these things, right? But that's not really a good excuse for invading the men's room. And see, that's the other thing. Women get all hung up about women's privacy. But when you think about this, you have the women's room. You go into the women's room, there are no urinals. As Mike pointed out, not a single part of the women's room requires women to expose their genitals out in the open where everybody else in the room can see. We have stalls, right? Or if you go into, like, the single-use ones, we usually have a door that locks. And so there is that. Like, when we go into the women's room, there's privacy. Like, women might change in there, but generally speaking, even then, most women will go into a stall, right? You go into the men's room, and there's usually a wall of urinals if there are multiple stalls. And if there's a wall of urinals, that means that there is a space that, in order to use the functioning parts of that space, men do have to expose their genitals in front of everybody else in the room. And, like, they can be comfortable with each other doing that, but there's no reason they should have to be comfortable with a woman walking in on them while they're doing that.
And I have to assume this is why, or one of the reasons why, unisex toilets are so unpalatable to the general public. I recently saw a video on Twitter of some American lady discovering a unisex toilet in an airport for the first time ever, and she started recording it on her phone because she was so excited by the prospect of it, and she was there filming the sign saying, "This be unisex toilet, man." And she walked in and, "That's a man. That's a man. This is so weird." And then she just with no qualms as to the ethical possibilities of what might make it weird to walk into a toilet and start filming. The nearest man at the sink saying, "So what do you think about this? Have you ever been in a unisex toilet before?" And he's going, "No, I haven't. This is so weird." Yeah, it is weird, isn't it? The fact that I'm here recording you on my fucking phone isn't weird, but how weird is this? And she kept doing it.
Jeez.
And every time she saw a woman, she was like, "Isn't this weird? You're there doing your makeup, and there's this man walking past." And every time a man walked past, she goes, "There's another man. There's another man. Look at that man. Look at that man. He walking past. It's so weird that there's a man here."
It's like the default is the women's room, and then unisex bathroom. So you can consider the fact that, for the men, it would be like having women in the men's room.
And I've been making this case ever since 2016. I made a video about this. I can't remember what it's called, but I reacted to this whole Target situation when Target first started doing gender segregated bathrooms because of the trans situation. And I was there going, "Why don't you just have one bathroom? Like, if this is all such a big problem, why don't you just let men and women use the same bathroom? What exactly is the problem?" And we all know what the problem is. The problem is women are scared of being raped. In the same way white people were scared of being raped by black people, and that's why they needed to make separate bathrooms. And we were then all, wait, not all black people are rapists, and so we didn't segregate bathrooms by race. And I'm there going, maybe we don't need to segregate bathrooms by gender because not all men are rapists. But no one's listened to me, not the fucking intersectional feminists and not the conservatives either, because both of them are dead set on this idea that men rape women. And that if we give them the same bathroom, then men are just going to be raping women left, right, and center.
Yeah. Oh well, and the fact is that most men are perfectly safe people to be around, and in fact, most men are an active safety measure for women. In that when they are around, the few people, male or female, who are going to be assholes in one way or another, will be on their better behavior, right? At least toward women. So, in my opinion, like my idea as far as a solution to this is real simple. Like Mike said, one bathroom. One bathroom, two sections. You have the main section with all the stalls. Everybody that has to poop can go to the stalls. Women can use the stalls. And then in that section can be a door that goes into another section where only the people that go into that section can see in there. And it can have urinals. And that would prevent the two groups from creating a long line in the bathroom. You'd be able to go in and urinate and go back out. I think men deserve to be able to use urinals because they can, and I don't think it should be taken away from them because of this issue.
It's what reduces the queues,
right?
And the queues are the worst part of the fucking toilet.
Yeah, they really are. So I think that would solve the problem too. And the truth is, as you look at this, and we'll go to another article here. These women are very comfortable doing this. So this article, this second article, this is a New York Post article, and the title is "Women in New York City or NYC Central Park. Men's Room Creates Buzz from the PEE Nut Gallery. And I'm going to skip down below the picture to the line, this park goer was PO'd. This park goer was pissed off. An Upper West Side woman says her friend was recently traumatized when he was interrupted midstream in a men's bathroom in Central Park by a parade of outlaw females who opted not to use the fully functional women's restroom.
What?
And she said, today I waited for a male friend as he was using the men's room around 67th Street by the Le Pen. I don't do French accents very well, so this Le Pen, I think. I think it's Quotidien.
Quotidien. Le Pen Quotidien.
Okay, Le Pen Quotidien Cafe. This is a city bathroom, posted Manhattan filmmaker Marianne Hedinger to Nextdoor, complete with photo on April 23rd. I counted at least 8 women who did not know each other go into the men's room with the men who did not say anything. My friend came out and was quite disturbed since women had come in as he was relieving himself. What's going on? Well, what is going on? And the post generated 228 comments. And of course, different people had different things to say. Be glad you're a New Yorker. In some states, politicians would be campaigning for election on this issue and winning, quipped one commenter. Then we have, I've been going into men's bathrooms for years. At movies, concerts, stadiums, it's been obvious for years that women's bathrooms need to be designed different, wrote Isabel N. So women are inconvenienced, therefore men give up their privacy? Right?
That seems to be the way they want this to go.
Piped in another nonplussed female. Same. Anywhere the women's line is a mile long and the men's line is like almost 0. I just say, not looking, and zip into the stall. And we're supposed to trust you, lady, that you're not looking. And it's supposed to matter that you're not looking. It's not embarrassing to be naked in front of you if you say you're not looking. The volunteers here, you can see in this next paragraph, can't really do anything. Volunteer told the Post the restroom drama occurs on busy weekends, and he often tells women to go to the tavern on the green, but women say it's too far. So they could go somewhere else, and they choose not to. There are no parks rules directly restricting individuals from using whatever restrooms they choose, the agency said, adding, our goal is not to issue summonses if we find an individual in a restroom that doesn't match their apparent gender. And it isn't a priority for them. So that's again, this was from 2022, so this from last year. From this year, we have Taylor Swift's Eras Tour has made women take over men's restrooms. So now they don't even have the agency to refrain from doing this. They just have to. There was a viral video. We're not going to play the video on here. But the story is linked in the low bar and the video is linked in the story. This was at this past April at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Reveals a men's restroom packed with pee-challenged women who are combating endlessly long lines at the ladies' room during the 3-hour-plus concert. I don't know. I don't go to concerts for like famous musicians and stuff. If it's not a bar, do they still serve drinks and stuff? How do they not?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, how do you not go 3 hours without, you go to the bathroom before you go, and then 3 hours later you go to the bathroom again, but if they're drinking liquid during the concert, that might make a difference. Oh, yeah. Especially if it's stadium-sized, those stadium cups, are bigger than your head.
Right. And depending on the type of show you're going to, sometimes they'll have intermissions in between acts where, you go to the concession stand and that's what people do. They go and they drink. and then they spend an inordinate amount of time in the bathroom pissing. And this is another thing that really just kind of irks me, because this is really just a function of the difference in the way men and women use the bathroom. Women have all of these belts and clothes and straps and things that they have to pull down and adjust and readjust when they pull their pants back up. And men, they unzip, they whip it out, and that's pretty much it. You wash your hands and you're done. It's not the men's fault that it is a longer process for women to use the restroom, but they're taking it out on men as if it's something that the men are doing to them, like on purpose.
And it's not just a result of biology. For some reason, women talk in the bathroom.
Yes.
A lot more than men do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tradition for men to talk to each other over the sink. It's a tradition for men to never, ever talk to each other over the urinals.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're kind of exposed to each other. I can see that, and especially like historically, there's always that concern about personal boundaries and everything. Like you would maintain those boundaries by not paying too much attention to the person next to you with their genitals exposed.
And there are sinks in men's bathrooms as well, but for whatever reason, men don't talk to each other over the sinks either. I mean, they do sometimes, but they don't have extended conversations over the sinks. They're just
yeah. Well,
actually,
women will
no,
talk about things in public that really nobody else should have to hear about.
And come to think of it, men don't talk to each other over the sinks either.
No.
They just wash their hair and they get the fuck out of there.
Unless you're in a work situation, because I've got some stories, man. These guys won't leave each other. I don't understand it. There's two guys, they're both in there, they're taking a shit, and they're having this conversation, and they're talking about cars or work or this customer or whatever. And like, why do you do this? And then there's guys that come in and they know that this guy's in there taking a shit, but they stand there. Now, mind you, remember, I have full view of this bathroom, right? They stand there with the door open, having a conversation with the dude who's in there taking a dump. So it's unbelievable. But I think that's...
But isn't it always about, like, mostly practical stuff? I'm going to do this task. Do you want me to do it this way? I need this item. Do you know where it is? That kind of thing.
For the most part, they are taking a break from the work situation. But this doesn't extend to recreational activities like being in a club or whatever.
Right.
Well, I'm casting my mind back years to when I ever went to clubs. But in those situations where men are just there to enjoy themselves, they only go to the toilet to piss, and then they leave. But it seems to be a different situation for women.
Women will have extended conversations in the bathroom about the bumps on the ex-boyfriend's dick and whether or not this was evidence of some sort of sexually transmitted disease that she might have now. And like, I've never met you before, and now I don't want to know you. Like, I probably didn't before, but now I really don't want to know you. Thanks for the info, TMitis. Okay, I'm infected. Thanks. Or worse, somebody else's information that's not related to them. Their mother-in-law's long history of urinary tract infections, or dating men that she shouldn't have any business talking to, or some shit like that. And it's just like, really, why do we have to hear about this? I don't really want to know. Go away. Discuss this someplace. This is not a private space, all right? There's a whole open room here. There's like 8 stalls. There are other people in here. Please talk about that somewhere else. Wait till you're in your car. But no, these conversations, women are just like, they just let everything all hang out. Maybe that's why they don't want men in there. They don't want men to know how gross they are, right? But trans women do everything they can to be women, right? Except for a very few who are gaming the concept of transphobia. And we will talk about those, but not until after we talk about a little bit more about women's boundary issues with regard to men's spaces, because this is something I really want to hammer home before we even get into the issue of the real thing that women are complaining about that they won't say. I think there's a reason for that too. The next article I'm going to get into it, I'm only going to briefly touch on the Taylor Swift thing. The one thing I will actually go back to that for is the idea that women are have no choice here, right? And I call bullshit on that, right? You have to know your own body, right? You have to know how much it takes for you to have to go to the bathroom. You have to know how long you have after you get that first signal from your body that it's time to go. And you have to be aware that, if you go to an event and they're serving beer or something and you drink 3 of them, that you're going to have to go to the bathroom shortly after that, right? There's no denying all of that. So for women to wait until it's urgent and then get pissed off because there's a line is unreasonable, in my opinion. If you're going to do that, you go before the event starts. And then if you're going to be drinking a lot, you go an hour in. Go get in line before you have to pee. If that's your situation, don't go into the men's room. That's their space. Right? Wait in line. Complain to the venue if you don't like the fact that women's restrooms are insufficient. Or maybe don't take so long. It's a lot faster if you don't try to do gymnastics hovering over the toilet seat that they've cleaned with every harsh chemical known to man. Right. So you're not going to get herpes from sitting on that seat. Just sit down, pee, wipe yourself, and get out. Really simple. But that's my opinion on that. You have agency. You are not helpless to prevent yourself from walking into the men's room. And the image you can see from this article, there is a whole line of women in this image. You can see you can't see the end of the line, the front of the line. It's at least 30 women there, next to a guy coming out of a stall and wiping his hands on a paper towel, so he's obviously washed his hands. He's coming out of the sinks area there. So this is definitely not just a couple of women going in there. This is just women just crowded into the men's room. Just complete invasion there. And can you imagine? Yeah, this is one woman's face is pixeled out too, right? The one up front that's really recognizable, but they didn't pixel out the guy. He's and he didn't look too thrilled. He looks very uncomfortable. So, and I guess I can see that. I would be too in his situation.
That guy's got a lanyard around his neck. He's clearly a bouncer.
Yeah, and he probably is am I supposed to do something about this? Can I do something about this? I hope they don't ask me to do something about this, because the women are going to bitch at him if he does. So, for people who think this is a brand new problem, we're going to talk about why female sports writers can go into men's locker rooms, where the men's showers are, where the men might be walking around in towels, where men might be naked, because that's what you do in locker rooms. You change clothes, and that does involve getting naked, especially after an athletic event and you're covered in sweat. You are going to get naked, you're going to shower, and then you're going to put on clean clothes. That's what you do in there. Common sense, right? I don't think there's ever been any kind of a push to allow male sports writers into women's locker rooms. I've never seen a news story about it. So this is not new. This is clear back in the 70s, right? So underneath the picture, the summary of this, Melissa Ludicky A writer for Sports Illustrated, is shown on the job in her office in New York, January 23rd, 1978.
Wow.
In 1978, I was 6 years old when she was involved in a court case to allow women reporters in sports locker rooms. Right? So I'm going to scroll way down here.
This was during the height of the patriarchy.
Yes.
Yes.
There we go. In 1978, in U.S. District Court, it was found that despite the defendant's argument that keeping women out was necessary to protect the image of baseball as a family sport, because we're talking about women going into a naked space, and to preserve traditional notions of decency and propriety, the baseball policy violated Luedecke's 14th Amendment rights to equal protection and due process in terms of her fundamental right to pursue her profession. Plus, there were plenty of easy ways to protect players' modesty without barring her from the room, and those ways that they talked about basically were, men, you must change the way that you use your locker room in order to accommodate a woman who wants to come in there. And that is essentially the, like, they talked about using bathrobes. They talked about setting a time for the reporters to come in there, because the male reporters would go in there when the men were in the buff. But they didn't care because it was just another guy. And this was, let's see, what baseball team? This was the New York Yankees, I think. When the Yankees made the playoffs in '77, Sports Illustrated assigned Melissa Luedecke to cover the series, but MLB had told her that as a woman she couldn't report from inside the locker room. In a concession, players would be brought out individually to speak to her when they were done dressing, and she sued. That's what that lawsuit was about. So they were going to accommodate her. But she wanted a specific accommodation.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Why do you need to be in a room full of half-naked, if not fully naked men to do your job? Like, why is this your argument? There's an absolute space and place where you can have your interview without having to set foot into that room. Yeah. I don't understand it. Now, I get the like the kind of insider story feel when you get the teams in the locker room, they're just finished the big game and let's get the blah blah blah. But really, that opened the door for lawsuits like this, and now women are just demanding that they be allowed anywhere at all times under any circumstances.
And I don't think any reporters should be allowed in the locker rooms. And this, I'm saying this as a journalist. And I've worked with different journalists that did different things. So, story time with Hannah. When I lived up north of where I live now, Northwest Ohio instead of Southwest Ohio, right? I worked in a little camera store on Main Street in Lima. That isn't there anymore. It's not. They went out of business during the Bush-Obama recession. But in any case, that camera store was in an old building, had humongous, front windows. Like the showroom was like a story and a half tall, big tall windows and everything. Went clear across the storefront with a door in the middle that sort of came into the store. And one day, and it just happened to coincide with when a semi was driving by, and I thought, what the hell is he carrying? The windows rattled, and I'd never seen him do that before. Just really rattled. And I was like, did you guys see that? And the guys I was working with were like, it's just a truck driving by. About an hour, maybe 2 hours later, somebody comes in, tells us about the house that had blown up across town. They had a gas leak in the basement, and it had filled the basement, and the whole house was gone. It had pretty much vaporized the house. It had done so much damage that the houses on either side were condemned. And in the course of that, the wife of the couple that lived there was killed, and the husband was in very serious condition and was in hospital. And a reporter from the Lyman News lied about being family to go in and talk to this man while he was grieving his dead wife, and demand that he answer to allegations that the gas company made about him modifying the gas lines in his basement, and that's why the house exploded. Now, this took place during a phenomenon, I'll say. There were house explosions on a regular basis in Ohio for a while because the gas companies were not reading meters, and if there was a leak in your basement, they didn't find it, and then people would have a moment where, their furnace would start, or they would go to light the pilot light, and their house would blow up. So this wasn't, in a vacuum where, like, you would just automatically believe the gas company. But the really bad thing was this reporter invading this man's hospital room. And I got into a conversation with other people at work because, I was a photojournalist and I sold cameras and film and processing services and that kind of thing to other photojournalists when I was working at that store. And we pretty much had a consensus that this was bullshit. This reporter never should have gone in there. It was an abuse. And like, they published a story about it from it and everything, and it was really out of line. And all of us were in agreement on that. And when you cover high school sports, like, the reporters don't really like to go in the high school kids and junior high school kids' locker rooms. They talk to kids on the field or on the court, depending on, like, on the track, not in the locker room for the most part, because you don't want to invade a space where there are underage people who might be naked. Right? You just don't. It would be very uncomfortable on both sides of that. It would be creepy for an adult to be in there that didn't, have anything to do with the team, not the coach, basically. And it would be really uncomfortable for an adult, at least if the adult wasn't weird, to be in there as well, if they weren't the mentor that's making sure everybody's okay in there. So that, I don't see any reason why it has to be different with adults, right? There's plenty of opportunities to interview athletes, and more opportunities outside the locker room could be created. But we have this situation where the media feels entitled to access in ways that are invasive, and you have sort of a spectrum between media who will contact you and say, hey, can I have an interview? Can we meet at this time? Like, have some sort of parameters and set boundaries where they're doing an interview. And then all the way at the other end, you have the paparazzi type media that will follow stars around and try to provoke them or catch them sneezing, and then they'll post photographs and pretend that it's, oh, this person was stoned. Well, no, actually that's like mid-sneeze or mid-yawn. Or no, this person wasn't violent. You got right up in their face 2 inches off of them and they were enforcing a boundary. And so you really need to look at this from the angle of, does the media have more right to cross your personal boundaries if you're famous than any other civilian? And I really don't think they do. Okay, Carly Ellison, you say a lot of ridiculous things, but that was truly, truly ridiculous. Only by crossing boundaries can we define them. Actually, no.
Oh,
you define boundaries by describing them, by enforcing them, by recognizing them, like by your behavior around the boundary, very much like the somebody else's problem force field, where you walk around it, you respect the space, you recognize that that's something that you don't cross, and you don't even always have to talk about it. There are some boundaries that you should be able to recognize and not cross without anybody ever telling you. Unless you want your boundaries defined by somebody walking up and grabbing your butt, or things like that, asking you about, your personal life. Like, obviously, there are some things that you should be able to recognize and have defined without a word. But, going on, women do have a problem with that. And this, not to be punny, completely illustrates it. Again, men's spaces, and we don't have the same thing going on with women's locker rooms. There is not a man in the world who has fought for the right to report from the women's locker room. Not one lawsuit. So going on, we've talked about men's bathrooms, we've talked about men's locker rooms. Those are nude spaces. So let's talk about places where men are psychologically naked. The shed movement, the men's shed movement, which Australia's credited with starting that. There are men's sheds in Australia. There are maker spaces that are similar here in the U.S. that are. It's really hard to get something to be male only here in the U.S. because women just fight tooth and nail to keep that from happening. There are men's sheds. There's a shed movement, I think, in Scotland and around the UK. But in Australia, women kind of got wind of the shed movement, the men's shed movement, and decided that it was unfair that women were not invited. Right? So what's the purpose of a men's shed? Well, there's a couple of things. Obviously, this gives men a place to bond with other men without having to accommodate and work around female sensibilities. And historically, and even currently, there is a defining line between male sensibilities and female sensibilities. It is why women are pushing for misogyny laws in places, because they've taken it to a ridiculous level. Women are offended if they think you're staring. Women are offended if they think you touched them inappropriately, even if you just bumped into them in a crowded train or on the street. Women ask for women-only trains in places like Japan because they accuse men of being groped. And honestly, I think that's a safety measure for men. Right? So men need spaces where they can go and relax and not have to worry about, does this woman think I'm looking at her when actually I'm trying to read this thing on the wall or on the table? Is this woman going to get upset if I fart? Right? We will not forget about the term fart rape. Like, is this woman going to get upset if I don't pay attention to her?
Or if the air conditioning's not at the level that she would appreciate.
Yeah. Is a woman going to come in here in an outfit that looks like a bra and a scarf around her waist and expect me to not look?
Right. It's pretty pathetic, I gotta say, Hannah. I don't know. I've never been one to want to be invited to a party that nobody ever invited me to. That kind of tends to be the place where I don't want to be. I don't want to be in the exact place where people don't want me. I mean, maybe it's just me. Is that just a me thing?
No, I think there are some people that understand that, and then there are some people that don't.
I mean, geez. Look, I understand, like, the fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
But even still, that doesn't explain this away. If you just want to step on the backs of the people that came before you and built something, and now you want to be a part of it. No, go build your own thing, lady.
Yeah.
Go do your own thing. I don't know where this was a trend, but I know the term. They're called she sheds.
Yeah,
right?
There's she sheds. But I mean, women have had a lot of different places that and there are things that women do that they don't really, men just don't get involved.
Right.
You know,
They
occasionally, like in a knitting circle or a crochet circle and stuff like that, you'll
mhm.
see a guy get involved, but not very often. And
Right.
if he's
Wait.
made to not be welcome, then he won't go in there because he doesn't feel welcome.
Surely a man shed is a thing, but a she shed is called a kitchen, is it not?
There you go.
Or the majority of the house in question. This is why there's no such thing as a she shed, right? Because the house belongs to the woman.
Believe it
and
or not,
this is why men have to build a man shed off property.
believe it or not,
Exactly.
she sheds are a response to man caves. Women pretend that they don't have the whole house, and they'll get a little outbuilding together, and they'll girlify it. Which is funny because the same women that do that will also have a hobby room. Right? And if they have extra space in their home. Like my mom had a sewing room. Now, granted, that was work. Like when I was a kid, probably about 2/3 of my clothing, anything that wasn't like blue jeans, because it was easier to buy blue jeans and they weren't that expensive back then. At least not if you got the right kind. And she made most, 2/3 of my clothing. She made a bunch of my dad's clothes. I still have things that my mom made. They don't fit me, but well, my dad's clothes do now. the things my mom made for my dad when I was a kid fit me now. That's pretty bad. Yeah, like that was a totally different thing. A lot of times women will have a hobby room and it'll be full of things they just never finish. Right? Like I have personally a bunch of half-finished projects all over the apartment. I don't have a special space for them. I'm a litter bug. But like what, Lauren?
Oh, I was gonna, make my little snide remarks like families. Like they don't finish their family.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Some women do not finish their families. But here we have this discussion about men's sheds. Now, Bettina Arndt, when she went to talk about this, it looks like her goal was to get people to understand that men need and deserve their own space. But there's two groups of people that sort of undermine that. One of them is women who do not like the idea of men having anything to themselves. And the other is gynocentric men who do everything they can to accommodate women, who treat women's interests as more important than their own and more important than those of other men. And so what you end up with is the writer of this article looked like they were trying to be very fair and balanced toward all the different positions that Bettina discovered here. So if you guys, if you're reading along, just scroll down past the picture of her speaking where it says underneath, Bettina Arndt has let rip at women for joining men's sheds, source YouTube/Bettina Arndt. And you can see a yellow extension cord on the wall, long yellow extension cord on the wall beside her. And it says, appearing in a lengthy YouTube video uploaded on her official channel, she visited men's sheds across the country to ask how their participants feel about welcoming women inside. And she says to the camera, it turns out women are being allowed in the door due to a bunch of virtue-signaling men who willingly sell out other males in order to win brownie points from the ladies. They don't believe in what men's sheds are supposed to be about. And this is there's two main purposes of men's sheds. One of them is for men to work on projects together without having to accommodate female sensibilities. The other is that special male companionship that comes from men doing things together, working on projects, and enjoying banter and secret men's talk. They don't believe men are more likely to share their problems with other men who get where they are coming from, who know what it's like to face broken marriages or prostate cancer. And that's the thing. The whole point of having these spaces is so that men have a place to do what feminists say men don't do enough of, and that is hash out their problems, address things that need to be addressed, and get help working on them. And men generally don't do that in front of women, because when they do, women get upset. Women get fearful, they get concerned, they get worried that the man might be dangerous, or they get worried that the man might fail to do for them the things that they expect from him. And Lauren, I thought I heard you start talking.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say they get spiteful, they get hateful. A man shows vulnerability or weakness, and they use that and abuse it.
I agree. I've seen that as well. As soon as a guy has any little vulnerability, there are women that will pounce and hurt him for fun.
Yep.
Like women accuse men of this, but there are women that are 10 times worse.
Right.
It's when men express vulnerabilities of which women are not aware.
Yeah.
It's not about expressing vulnerabilities. It's about expressing every minute vulnerability you have to the women in your life. That's what it's about. They say you need to express vulnerabilities, but what they mean is we need to know every microscopic detail about your emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to express it to us, not to other men, because that's not expressive. We need to know everything that we can know that we can use against you.
Or tell you that you don't have permission to experience.
Yeah.
And that's Derek Workman has another point that I think is really valid too. They make it about them.
Yeah.
Right? Guy starts talking about his health problem. Maybe he's experiencing changes to his energy level, and he's not sure whether it's a testosterone issue or a heart issue, and he's worried because of his weight. And maybe he doesn't want to talk about that in front of women to begin with, because who wants to sit in front of the opposite sex that they might want to have at least some level of attraction and admiration for them, and say, well, I feel like I'm getting fat and lazy and tired, right? Who wants to do that? I'm not raising my hand going, hey, everybody, I'm fat and lazy and tired. I might be having heart problems. I don't want to tell everybody that. For one thing, I wouldn't want to worry everybody, right? For another thing, that's a me problem. That's not an everybody problem. If I was going to ask for somebody for advice from somebody about that, besides my doctor, I would not want to ask that in a public space. I'd want to ask that in a comfortable space. And I would think men are the same way. When men don't want to hear a bunch of women get together and talk about the period problems either.
Right.
Right? They don't. Women don't really want to hear a bunch of women talking about their period problems. Well, at least some of us don't.
No.
Right?
No.
But the discussions do happen, because sometimes you need to share information in order to address things that happen that suck. And, you have health. You have body, you're going to have health. You're going to have things that happen that suck. You're going to want to talk to them. Someone who has a similar body, and one with the same body chemistry and hormones and stuff, similar genitalia and all that, not someone of the opposite sex who isn't going to understand.
Yeah.
So.
And that's not to say we can even trust our doctors anymore.
No.
I won't elaborate on that any further, but I guess you all get what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So you have that issue. And women will turn around and make these discussions, like a guy starts talking about that problem in front of a woman, she's going to start talking about her health problems. Or she might, if she's associated with him, like, guy goes to a men's shed with his wife, he's not going to want to talk about his health problems that he hasn't talked to her about to some other guy in front of her, because the next thing he's going to hear is, why didn't you talk to me about this? Like, why didn't I ask you about my testosterone questions? How much do you know about testosterone, wife? Or, I told you should go to the doctor.
Right. Chastising.
Well, Bob has experienced this already. I want to know what his experience was. The doctor isn't going to tell me anything about Bob's experience. He doesn't even know Bob.
Right.
So it goes on. Her views appear to divide many, and men's shed patron Tim Matheson admitted a lot of men lose their social interaction when they retire. So having a safe space, because men have their social interaction around work, right? So having a safe space to go to meet people is hugely important. Another man said that he'd fight all the way to prevent women coming into his local men's shed, while another simply described the prospect as ugly. And of course, women aren't going to understand why. Or if they do understand why, they're going to be mad. One man, an ex-member, even commented on the video, "I attended the local men's shed for about 4 years until they allowed both women and school kids to attend. I no longer go there. Just another nail in the coffin for Western men." However, others agreed it was time to include women in the movement, and chairman of the Australian Men's Shed Association, Kevin Callanan, is all for welcoming female participants. He set up the Kerr Ring Guy Shed, and said, "I was looking for something that was neutral, something that reflected the fact that it was open to a range of people." One internet user claimed it was more complex than a simple yes or no. And some sheds can't actually receive funding without welcoming women too. They commented on the video, "When new sheds ask for government funding, some won't get the funding unless they indicate that either other members of the community are allowed to use the facility, read that as meaning women, or they simply state that women should be allowed." Meanwhile, another user remained on the fence, adding, "I can totally see why women would want to join. They're doing interesting stuff, and I bet they have a laugh. But if I were one of those blokes, I'd oppose it all the way." According to the Australian Men's Shed Association, women are welcomed at most sheds, but are advised to call first to ensure they have activities you would like to participate in. And honestly, I don't see why they can't have a percentage of sheds that are set aside as men only. In fact, that should be the bulk of them. And women, if women want these kinds of facilities, why don't women create their own, instead of demanding access to men's spaces? And the reason is women don't want men to have their own spaces.
They sure don't.
So, Bettina was right that in pointing out that this isn't just an issue of women pushing. If men are not presenting a unified front on this, and if men cannot respect that there are some men who do need spaces like this without women's involvement, interference, or presence, then they're going to lose out on being able to help those men. Like, that's just a flat out truth. There's no getting around it. Some guys need spaces where they can engage with other men, doing projects, doing things that once you're done, you have accomplished something, you've built something, you've cleaned something, you've fixed something, whatever. something where a task has been performed together and they have that conversation in the midst of doing something, and it allows them to work on themselves and each other and the thing at the same time. Right? But women do not accept that. So we have gone full circle here on what women are not respecting, right? Women are not respecting men's physically naked spaces. Women are not respecting even men's physically naked spaces where you're disposing of your body's garbage. You're getting rid of, your bodily waste. You can't go to the bathroom without a woman coming in. And women are not respecting men's psychologically naked spaces. So we get into, I'm not going to bring up further news stories here, but we get into the rest of this discussion, right? What is it then that women are afraid of? Because clearly they're not afraid of men. No. If they were, they wouldn't go into all these spaces, would they?
I think the only thing they're afraid of is being told no.
Yeah, I got a couple of things. So let's first consider the popularity of professional drag, because I'm not like, you look at some of the drag that's being highlighted on Twitter now, it's now very professional. But if you look at what's the name of RuPaul's show?
The Drag Race.
The Drag Race. If you look at the drag on that show, and you look at how that's accomplished and everything, all the work that goes into it, and all the accoutrements of femininity that can be adopted by biological males, some of whom are cis men, to use trans terminology. They identify as men. They are men. They identify as men. They do not identify as women, but they are highly skilled at presenting themselves as women. And some of them are more beautiful than many, many biological women who identify as women. Right? That's a threat to anybody whose value is based on their popularity, their ability to gain popularity, their ability to feel popular, their ability to feel like people are enjoying looking at them, that want their attention and want to pay attention to them. So you walk into a bathroom to primp, and there is a trans woman primping in there, and she's prettier than you are.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. That's the first fear I would highlight. Right? And it's unreasonable for the same reason that women are afraid of other women who are prettier than they are. So there's that one, right? And I'm sure, I'm not the only one who has met trans women who I thought were prettier than me. Now I enjoy it. I think it's fun because I enjoy people watching. And having been a photographer and everything, I enjoy all of the aesthetic presentation. I enjoy all of the showmanship, right? And the show-offiness of it. I don't have to participate in all of that to enjoy it. I get to document, and I like that. That's fun. So I'm a little different in that, not so much that I'm not like other girls as I think I'm not like other people in general on that. I think there's a difference between the capture the image artist and everyone else in the world on that kind of thing, right? So, and some people don't like it. Some people don't like drag. Some people don't like anything that involves acting. Some people don't like anything that involves they don't like women who wear too much makeup. They don't like women who have fake hair. And that's the other thing. And gosh, what's her name on Gutfeld? Kat Tibbs talks about this, right? In fact, she went on a rant about it. I think it was kind of misplaced because she talked about it like something that all of society puts on women, but I've never felt obligated to do any of the things that she was talking about. But a lot of women, in order to feel attractive, like biological, born with a vagina women, grew up as little girls and all that, have to have fake hair, fake eyelashes, fake boobs, makeup on every inch of their skin from the collarbone up and all the way back to behind their ears. Perms, fake hair color, jewelry, clothing that holds their body to a different shape than it would naturally have if they were nude. Like shoes that make them taller and cause their butt to stick out. Fake butts. And then at the other end of it.
But they want a real man.
Right? But they want a real man. And they get very upset about men who wear fake boobs, fake hair, makeup, shoes that make them taller and cause their butts to stick out, fake butt cheeks, right? They're not doing anything different than you are, honey.
Right. They don't like the competition. That's what it is.
Right? So there is that, right? There is the threat of competition. There is the threat of competition for attention and competition for social pull, social cred, right? That's one thing. Right? Then there's also, like, if you look at how people view mental health conditions, gender dysphoria is a mental health condition. It's not the same as depression or bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia, or borderline personality disorder, or any of the it's more similar to other body dysmorphic disorders like anorexia, Alice in Wonderland syndrome, like things that cause you to feel like one of your body parts is just off kilter, or something about your body is wrong, that you aren't comfortable living in it, right? And so people treat people with mental health conditions as though they are skeezy, right? As though, like they've got something dangerous about them. They take that as a threat. They stereotype people with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia as potentially violent. And a lot of times they'll stereotype people with depression as a constant suicide threat. Some people are suicidal if they're depressed. Some people aren't, right? And in terms of the different body dysmorphic disorders, where people have a difference between their perception of their body and the way their body actually is, or a difference between how they think their body should be and how their body is, and they are pathologically disturbed by that difference, right? Like those situations, people will stereotype that as well. And I think there's a stereotype of trans women, and to a degree a stereotype of trans men as well, that goes along with that. Treating people as self-hating and having their perceptions off and being suspect because of this, right? That is much more a much more broad application than exists in real life. There are a small percentage of people who either fake the disorder or who have other reasons why they are disturbed, and they get diagnosed or they get treated as though they have the disorder. And there are complications now with regard to the issue of adults trying to convince children to be trans, and trying to treat children's interest in being trans, or children's experience of minor gender dysphoria and other mental health conditions, as if it is the same as an adult experiences with gender dysphoria. And of course, there's also questions as to, the treatment of gender dysphoria through transitioning. Is this the best thing that we can do for people who experience this? Mm-hmm. And all of those issues deserve public discussion. All of those issues deserve, and the people who experience those issues deserve consideration, not just in terms of their perspective, but also in terms of how can society best help them.
Right.
And it's fair to acknowledge that in among all of that, there are people who go into the wrong restroom because they are dangerous. But they're not dangerous because they're men.
Right.
They're dangerous because they have some sort of mental health condition or some sort of personality but characteristics that make them dangerous. They have different attitudes toward people, boundary issues, malicious intent, and so on. And we should be able to recognize that people who behave that way because it's their personality as human beings, not because they are biologically male or biologically female, old, young, gay, straight, black, white. That is a human behavior.
Yep.
So I think the thing that I wanted to really discuss, in terms of this, is the dishonesty in this issue. The profound, broad spectrum dishonesty. We are talking about a phenomenon of women's advocates accusing a whole demographic of people of being dangerous in order to address a minority within that demographic without confronting the real issues with regard to that minority.
Yeah, exactly. It's just weird how, the going theme is that transgender people are marginalized, and while yes, they're a smaller percentage than the general population, but if you feel that these people are marginalized, well, then what's wrong with talking about transgender issues, right? But the first thing that they say when you do that is, oh, you're transphobic.
Yep.
You're just transphobic. You can't have any opinion, good, bad, or indifferent, about the situation because you're not allowed to. There's somewhere on the progressive stack of oppression that they are just untouchable. Well, what is it? Either you're marginalized and they're oppressed because no one's addressing their issues, or do we want to have the conversation at all? We can't even do that because it's like a feedback loop. It goes right back into, well, you're just a sexist, racist, xenophobe, misogynist. And it gets us nowhere. And the only people who are suffering during all of this are the people who are in this limbo of this transgender identity, because they really don't. They're trying to figure out what's going on with their bodies,
Yeah.
and to just say that let's just toss this conversation because some people may feel too sensitive about it. Well, I then those are the people that I really don't take as being serious. If you are a transgender person and you're offended anytime someone brings up the subject, then I really don't think that you really want anyone to come to your aid, to your benefit, to help you and to try to figure this thing out. No, all you want to do is point the finger and say, this person is the reason that I'm in this position in my life.
And we have a situation where all of a sudden we're not allowed to talk about a particular phenomenon that actually has a disorder named after it. There's actually 2 disorders named after it. So I don't know if people know their history. I'm not going to get really deep into this in regard to Munchausen syndrome and Munchausen syndrome by proxy. But Munchausen syndrome was named after Baron von Munchausen, who faked or who was accused of faking mental illness. And I'm not going to get into reasons and all the history around that, because the last time I read about this is long enough ago that I'm not sure I would say it all correctly. But the underlying thing is it is about faking mental illness. And of course, Munchausen syndrome by proxy is kind of the almost the opposite, the other side of the coin from hypochondria, where you're faking somebody else's illness in order to fake being a caregiver for that person, and get kudos for being that person's caregiver. It's an ego thing, and it's an illness. And so Munchausen syndrome, faking mental illness, is it's a behavioral disorder where the individual adopts symptoms of a mental health condition and lives as if that is their reality in order to gain attention, gain treatments that they want. Like they might be addicted to psychological medications, or they might be addicted to the attention that they get from therapy. A person might fake having a disorder that allows them to get away with things. Like, for instance, if a person has depression, they are going to have some lack of motivation. And so if they fail to accomplish things that they should be accomplishing, they can turn around and say, I'm sorry, I allowed my depression to get the better of me, right? That kind of behavior, faking depression to get away with that kind of thing, or faking, say, bipolar disorder to get away with being bad with money or engaging in bad behavior. A lot of times it becomes obvious because the individual's behavior is going to be more, it's not going to be the same as, like, people with depression will try and fail at motivation. People with bipolar disorder will try and fail at self-control. But people who are faking will not try and fail. They will lean into that failure.
Yep.
Right? So that's a difference, right? So you see this with gender dysphoria. People who are genuinely trying to transition, people with genuine gender dysphoria, will put every effort into fitting in as women or fitting in as men when they are biologically the opposite sex. They will have surgery, they will take hormones, they will alter their clothing. If facial hair isn't normal for the gender they're trying to present as, they will remove their facial hair. Right? They, that kind of thing. They will wear fake hair. They will, essentially do really their best at drag in order to present, in order to pass as the opposite sex. But a lot of times, the people who you see demonstrating predatory intent will barely put in any effort. They might throw on a dress, or they might, sort of disguise as a man when they're actually female, but the effort isn't necessarily there, unless it is required in order to gain them access to the people they want to prey on, or in order to allow them to get away with the behavior that they think being the opposite sex will allow them to get away with. And this is more likely to happen with the female sex, the female gender, right? The male sex trying to be the female gender, because women get away with things that men do not. Women get away with a lot of things that men do not. So there is an access of female privilege that takes place with regard to trenders, people who are trying to exploit society's accommodation of trans status, right? As we try to, as a society, we've made an effort in the last 10 years to become more progressive in regard to LGBT issues, that we treat gay people the same as straight people in terms of human rights, that we treat people who are trans, people who are gender atypical, people who don't fit your stereotype of this is what a woman acts like or this is what a man acts like. We've made an effort over the last, really my whole lifetime. I've watched society struggle and work very hard to recognize that just because somebody is very different from you doesn't mean that you treat them as less human. And so there's a sensitivity to prejudice against people because of the color of their skin, against people because of their sexuality, against people because of their religious beliefs, and against people because of their gender identity. And that's fair. We should have that. We should want to treat everybody as human beings. We should want to treat everybody with dignity and respect, a basic level of dignity and respect. If somebody goes in, for instance, to a pharmacy to pay for hormones that their doctor has prescribed to them, and maybe they don't pass for the sex that they identify as a cashier behind the counter, and as a pharmacy worker, an individual shouldn't turn around and go behind the counter where they can't be seen and laugh at them, right?
Yeah.
Like that's asshole behavior, right?
Yeah.
If you go into a store and you're shopping and somebody's in line in front of you or behind you and they're different in some way, it's not an excuse to butt up in front of them and stuff like that. It's not an excuse to make nasty comments about them or anything like that, right? Those are normal behaviors. Those are normal accommodations. But it's very easy for somebody to take advantage of that and say, you can't criticize my boundary crossing behavior because it's the same for you to criticize my boundary crossing behavior as it is for you to make nasty comments about the trans woman that's standing in front of you in line at the grocery store. Guess what? No, it's not.
Right.
And that's one situation that I think we are failing at in public discussion, is we cannot seem to coordinate recognizing, yeah, that person is trans, so what? We're going to treat them the same as we treat everybody else, they're human being. Versus, no, it's not transphobic to suggest that somebody trying to kick in the door of a stall in the bathroom is behaving inappropriately. So if you can recognize that while simultaneously recognizing that somebody who just walks in, uses the stall, and then leaves is doing nothing wrong, you're advanced. If you can recognize that without having to lose the ability to treat other people like human beings, then we're next level, right? But at this moment, we're stuck in this discussion, and this is because of women. We're stuck in this discussion where it's either or.
Right.
We got to get past that. And we're stuck in this discussion where it's either or because, quote unquote, men are violent.
It's just, you gotta laugh. You gotta laugh. I can't. I just want to bang my head against the wall. These women are just unbelievable.
Yeah.
The level of entitlement is just, it does my head in. I don't know.
Yeah, and it really takes me back to that statement I made earlier in agreement with Mike about, we need to just abandon gender bathrooms. We just go to unisex bathrooms And, the only caveat that I add is there should be a urinal space. And obviously, you really only need urinals if you pee standing up. Anybody that's going to pee standing up should be able to go in there and pee standing up. And I think that would solve the problem. Because, honestly, the tiny minority of people who would behave, like I said, come in and actually be predatory, actually do something to women in a women's bathroom, they're not going to behave that way if the overwhelming majority of other men are in there. They're not going to do that in front of guys who are protective of women. They're not going to do that in front of guys who are even neutral to women, because those guys will call the cops even if they don't stand up to them, even if they don't sacrifice their safety. Men do have a tendency to sacrifice their safety to protect women, though, and just the knowledge of that alone keeps a lot of predators in line if they are in a public area and they're not alone with somebody that's vulnerable. And frankly, women who are making these claims about being endangered by the fact that men can come into women's rooms by pretending to be trans don't consider the fact that those same men might be a threat to the men in the men's restroom. Right? They don't consider the fact that little boys use the men's restroom. Right? So if somebody actually is predatory, and their predatory nature is that they get off on hurting somebody or scaring somebody, or crossing boundaries that they don't have a right to cross, they're going to behave that way regardless of who they're confronting. I think genderless bathrooms would solve that problem. There'd be fewer times when they were empty, and there would be fewer people in there by themselves, that would be vulnerable. So, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that idea?
I do not.
Get to the point where we're wearing you out. It's actually 9:14, so we're 15 minutes away from the after show.
Yeah, I'm a little thrown off by some happenings in the chat, so I'm going to
I've been kind of
about all that.
Yeah, I've been kind of following that a little bit, but I think Mike handled it. I think.
Yeah.
So
we handled it together. Looking through all these articles, we're gonna go through half. Are you gonna do it all again next week?
It just kind of depends. So, I'm having some difficulty getting coordinated with Deborah. And I think it's partly because she's busy. She's doing a lot of work. So she's talked about having the conversation, and then we haven't had a chance to do it. So there you go. So we might talk more about this next week. There's a few other issues that are sort of on my plate that we might talk about, but we're definitely going to have a show next week either way. So, and I don't usually, when I get in touch with Deborah, when we do set a schedule, it's not for the upcoming show. She usually has to fit it in later in her schedule, because like I said, she's a very busy lady, does quite a bit of things. So probably it's going to be one of the other discussions, and I haven't decided yet exactly. So I'm not going to make any promises as to specifically what. But that's the other thing. I'm a little bit fly by night with topics, because sometimes there are things that come up that it's like, well, we were going to talk about that, but we really need to talk about this week, and it can't wait. So that happens, and I roll with it. So there you go. I don't think we really got any super chats during this show, and there are not more super chows. So I'm really gonna look at. Let's see, where is my tab that has Rumble in it. See if there's any comments from Rumble. And not a ton, but yeah, Madman Productions pointed out it's like suing for wrongful termination. If you win, it's just going to be awkward as hell when you're back.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. Like, you sue to get into some place where you're not invited. You sue to get into some place where you're not welcome. Then you go there. Like, you've created an adversarial situation.
Yeah.
Kind of a crap situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, but she thought in her mind, she's making big strides.
Yeah.
I'm doing something.
In my opinion, it really should have to be worth it to do that. Like,
yeah.
For instance, suing to get access to a level of education. That's fair, right? If that level of education determines whether or not you can become a doctor, a lawyer, a CEO of a company, things like that, and you're kept out because of your demographic, it's worth fighting the environment that you're going to walk into in order to prove yourself, right? As long as you're confident that you can. And historically, both minorities and women have had to do that. And it's women haven't had the tough road, really, that minorities had. Because different minorities have been treated as unqualified due to lack of intelligence and things like that were just really wrong beliefs. Wrong stereotyping. Like, it's just bullshit. Whereas the reasons why women were kept out of some areas were more nuanced. Some places were considered to be dangerous to women. The educational environment, like higher education, women were not necessarily going into the profession after they got the degree. And universities have reason, and society has reason, to want people to go into the profession after they get the degree. We need people to actually become doctors after they get a medical degree, right? We need people to actually become interpreters after they learn to speak 7 languages and not just brag about it. Right. So, once the workplace became safe enough that women wanted to go there, and middle-class women started flooding in, and stuff like that, women started using their degrees to do jobs. It became reasonable for women to expect access. And by the time women sued for that, and feminists lobbied for law and policy in regard to that, universities were already evolving to make room for us anyway. So it's kind of, I don't think it's comparable to the civil rights movement at all. I think a lot of women would really hate me for saying that, but it's true. Men made space for us, whereas a lot of minorities had to fight tooth and nail to be treated like the people that they are. But anyway, but yeah, it should be something that important, and not, I want access to this private club. Like, start your own club. Right. With blackjack and hookers.
Now that's a hill. That's a hill I would die on.
There you go. So without any other super chats, without any other super chows or anything like that, I am going to say I think we've got this covered. And it looks like the discussion in the chat was settled as well. And yes, I said hookers. And I'm not talking about crochet. So thanks everybody for listening to this. This is, I don't know if we'd call it a spicy sausage, but it was definitely a very stuffed sausage. Thanks.
It was a German sausage.
Yes, there we go. A Germain sausage. How's that? But not Germaine Greer. We don't like her here. And thanks to both of you for coming on and talking about this issue. I think we had a lot of interesting things and important points to make. And thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. Remember, everybody, if you want to see the articles and stuff, everything's linked in the low bar. And good night, all.
Yo.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.